Hi, hello, I'm happy to have you here. My name is Ahdieh, I'm a chaotic reader, and I just turned 30 last week. So what better way to celebrate than look back at 30 romantasy books over the last few years, basically, and rank them from best to worst. Some disclaimers before we jump in. I use the term romantasy rather loosely here. These books all have varying degrees of fantasy plotline and romance plotline in them. Some might be more fantasy heavy, some might be more romance heavy, but for the sake of the video, I'm putting them all under the romantasy category. Second, I counted entire book series as just one on the list, otherwise the 30 books would have been filled out with just a few series and that's it. I will rank the books within the series individually, but they counted together as one on the list. And last but not least, let's take a look at my tiers. So we have on the top, I would sell my soul for these. These are basically gonna be my top tier books, the ones that I will never stop talking about, the ones that I will never stop recommending. For the second highest tier, we have I Was Invested. Basically, these are books which exceeded expectations and I had a great time with them, but maybe something was missing, so they never made it to the highest tier. In the middle, we have I Felt Something briefly. These books were not outstanding in any way, but they also do not deserve a lower rating. These are gonna be truly mid-tier books in every meaning of the word. Then on the lower end, we have Is It Cursed or Am I Cursed? These books got me questioning either my sanity or my own taste when I didn't find them enjoyable. You might be surprised by how many books will land in this category. And on the very rock bottom, we have I Want My Time Back, which I feel like is rather self-explanatory. Basically, I thought reading these books was a waste of my time personally, and I couldn't find any redeeming qualities about them. With all of that cleared up, let's start ranking the books. Let's start with a truly nostalgic choice. Sorcery of Thorns. I was really much invested. So I finished this book in 2022, and the fact that some scenes and characters still remain in my memory just stands as a testament to how much I enjoyed this book. It was whimsical, it was magical. I would say the vibes were very similar to Howl's Moving Castle, more the Studio Ghibli version and less that of the book. Also, you will realize I have a soft spot for capable but slightly insufferable love interests like Nathaniel Thorne in Sorcery of Thorns. So I had a great time with it. It also had outstanding side characters in Silas, our demonic butler, who can also shapeshift into a white cat. Honestly, just talking about this book makes me want to reread it, so it deserves the I Was Invested tier. Next, let's go a little bit on the negative side. From Blood and Ash, I Want My Time Back. This was actually an even earlier read. I believe I finished it in 2021. And my only memory at this point is that I didn't like it. I actually have my notes pulled up on my phone on the side because some of these books I truly read like 5 years ago and have very little recollection of them. So for Blood and Ash, my notes go, it was so boring. The whole maiden purity thing is rather creepy. And the plot twists were predictable and the love story development was underwhelming. So I believe I picked this up as one of the first hyped romantasy books that kind of made their waves over on booktube, and I Want My Time Back. This was not a good time for me. Something completely different and very much recent. Let's go for Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross, which was an easy 5-star read, my favorite book of 2025. I had high expectations because Rebecca Ross is one of my favorite writers, and the whole theme of immortality versus humanity is very much one of my favorite themes to explore through fiction. So safe to say, my expectations were sky high. I feel like Rebecca Ross always writes love stories where the love itself feels earned, and the hardships that the characters face always raise the stakes so well. All in all, I will never stop recommending Wild Reverence from Rebecca Ross. Let's go for a bit of a letdown. So, The Knight and the Moth. I really wanted to like it, but I think that it can only go as far up as the I felt something briefly tier, because it was just a lukewarm experience for me. The fact that the most memorable thing from this book, and I read this last year, was the gargoyle side character, tells you a lot about how much I cared for the central plotline, the main characters, internal conflict, external conflict, the whole love story development. Yeah, it just didn't land with me. Next, let's go for something a bit older. Is a far wilder magic the same as A Night and the Moth? In a sense that it was also a letdown, and I didn't expect it to be let down because I was really much into this whole dark cottagecore setting with like a hunt as a main plotline. But I have a bit of a hard time articulating why this book didn't land for me. What I remember is that I tried the audiobook version. In this audiobook, they gave the main male character, Preston, a really insufferable accent. And it bothered me so much to listen to it that I feel like because of that, the whole story was ruined for me. So yeah, I felt something briefly, but overall as a book, it just didn't really work for me. But it might be on me, not on the book at this point. Okay, series. If you know my channel, if you watch my videos for the last couple of years, you know one of my favorite series is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. But I rate the books within the series very differently. Once Upon a Broken Heart, I was invested. It pulled me in, the whole like fairy tale vibes, a little bit of dark, but mostly YA fairy tale vibes. I really liked Jax as a character, amazing. The Ballad of Never After. I would sell my soul for this book, just to read it again, just to absorb it, just to never forget it. This was a truly life-changing reading experience, and I will never stop recommending the series, mainly because of the second book. And then we had the third book, which is A Curse for True Love. I was invested, but actually I expected it to really be the crown jewel of the trilogy, and it fell short. I didn't feel like the whole payoff was as grand as the build-up, and the whole conflict resolution just left me a little bit unsatisfied. So as much as I enjoyed the first book and the second, the third one, even though I put it in the I was invested tier, I was a lot less invested in it than the first two books. But overall, amazing series, can only recommend it. Now, let's go for The Wrath and the Dawn. Another sort of nostalgia pick. I read this back in 2023. I would say this was again, overall, only a mid-tier read, unfortunately, despite the high expectations. I remember that the world building was done really well. It was immersive, rich with descriptions of scents, flavors, colors, but the characters felt rather underdeveloped and lacking depth at that point. So I think I read a couple other fantasy romance fantasy books in the meantime, and by the point that I got to this, I felt like I had a bit of higher standards, and this book unfortunately didn't really reach those. So I felt something briefly. It was more like a mid-tier experience for me. Something that made me feel a whole lot of things is a duology, We Hunt the Flame and We Free the Stars. Where would I put them? In the second highest tier or the top highest tier? We Hunt the Flame, I was invested from the get-go. This is actually a counterexample when in a story you have both the rich, immersive world building, but also nicely developed character arcs. I have a soft spot for a tortured prince character who believes he is unlovable due to his upbringing in this story, and he acquires a group of friends who teach him how to see the value in himself. Chef's Kiss. So V Hunt the Flame, very highly rated. V Free the Stars, I feel like dragged a little bit, especially when it came to sort of like the mid parts, but still deserves a very high rating, and I was completely invested in the series as a whole. Let's go for one that again is gonna land more on the negative end. Heartless Hunter, is it cursed or am I cursed? Because if I think about it, the setting of a witch and witch hunter romance, especially with interesting world building and a touch of deception, I expected to eat this up. And I think the beginning really captivated me, but overall the conflict made me want to tear my hair out. And I remember that after around 85%, and that's exactly what I wrote in my notes, after 85%, everything went downhill. And I was so disappointed that I even questioned myself, why did I even finish it, when I clearly disliked the direction that the story was going. Is it cursed or am I cursed, or I want my time back? Honestly, I want my time back. I feel like this book promised to deliver in a lot of fronts, and for my personal taste, it didn't do any of it. So I want my time back, I'm sorry. I never even entertained the idea of picking up the sequel for that reason. Now, let's go for a book that achieved the feat of me rereading it not only 2, but I think 3 times at this point. And it's truly a hidden gem, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. It is A Taste of Gold and Iron, and I would sell my soul for this book. How do I convince you to pick it up? If you like devotion and trust as the central themes between the characters, and you would love to read about some truly elite tier yearning between a shy prince and his loyal but seemingly aloof bodyguard, who is also just a cinnamon roll softie, you need to pick this up. This is such a masterpiece. I will never stop rereading it. I would sell my soul for this very easy highest tier book. Now, A Fate Inked in Blood. I felt something briefly. Honestly, the first part, like especially the opening scene, was one of the strongest opening scenes I've ever read in a fantasy. But unfortunately, by the second part, this book completely lost me. I felt like the ending was really predictable and not in a satisfying way. And despite the strong opening, I felt like the book completely lost its drive by the second half. So I felt something briefly. If the book continued with the same trajectory as the first half, I definitely would have rated it higher. But unfortunately, here we are. Another hidden gem on the list though, Forest of Dreams and Whispers. Very much in the same league as Sorcery of Thorns when it comes to the character of the main male love interest. I would say if you're unsure about reading Fae romance and you're not particularly attracted to the Akotar types, the perfect and beautiful and whatever Fae men, this might be a good alternative for you. The male main character, the Fae Prince, is again a little bit capable, a little bit useless, and very charming overall. So I had a really good time with this book. Let's go back to the top tier for 1 second. Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, easily top tier in any kind of reading list that I will ever put together. They are the reason why Rebecca Ross is one of my favorite authors to this day. I will say this, and I said it before, I feel like the true strength of the story lies in how the characters are built up with their own struggles and internal battles, and how they find understanding in each other, and how they build trust between each other. And I think in Divine Rivals, but also in the sequel Ruthless Vows, it's done so beautifully. And especially in the second part, Rebecca Ross achieved the feat, which is not letting the spark go flat, and still managed to keep up the tension and the stakes between the 2 main characters, but also with the main plotline. Next up, a book which I have mixed feelings about. What the River Knows. Is it cursed or am I cursed? Does it deserve this? Would I put it this low or should I put it kind of mid-tier? Because the thing is, I truly had mixed feelings about it. I like the 18th century Egypt and the magical artifacts as setting details, but the characters just didn't really work for me. To me, it felt like the plot had no flow. It was basically the main character's decisions and the consequences, which were entirely predictable, and everything turned out exactly how you would expect it. The romance could have saved it for me, but it also fell short of my expectations. So with this book, I truly don't know, can the flaws be pointed out objectively, or is it really just me for whom the book didn't really land? Let's go back in time for another nostalgic pick. Belladonna. I felt something briefly. It's been 3 years since I read Belladonna, and all I can recall is that the love interest is literal death, and there was some sort of gothic murder mystery plotline mixed in. It was an interesting time for a brief while, but not very memorable. I think my main criticism with this is that I missed the whole moral dilemma of being in love with death itself. And that kind of skewed my whole perception of the book, rather towards a mid-reading experience. So Belladonna, I felt something briefly. Then, a truly standout duology is One Dark Window and, where is the second part? Two Twisted Crowns. I would sell my soul for these books once again. Honestly, looking at the list, it seems like all of my favorite fantasy romance books are duologies, and that applies to this one as well. I described it time and time again, but what makes it great is not necessarily that there are great plot twists or a new take on usual fantasy or romance tropes, but exactly the fact that all of them are included and executed so well here. The magic system is interesting with a deck of cards. We have a gothic setting with a castle and misty forests, and while the twists are predictable, they are really satisfying to uncover, and the romance build-up is also nicely done. I mentioned enjoying reading about tortured prince characters, so it felt like Elm, specifically in the second book, was written exactly as a treat for me. Now on to something else, Immortal. Very recent read, and I really wanted to like it, but it lost me after 1/3 of the story basically. I was preparing for immersive world building, twisty character relationships and alliances, and what I got was a bit of a lukewarm scene descriptions with a lot of conflicts smoothed over by very easy resolutions, which didn't sit well with me. I always have a hard time believing when characters just say something or they especially proclaim that they stand for something, but we never see their choices or actions demonstrate that. And that unfortunately happened here. So as much as I love watching historical fantasy C-dramas, Immortal didn't quite reach the same enjoyment for me, and I could only rate it as high as I felt something briefly. Okay, this might be controversial. Next, let's go for Fourth Wing, Iron Flame and Onyx Storm. So Fourth Wing lands in I was invested, Iron Flame lands in I want my time back, and Onyx Storm lands in I felt something briefly. So as you can tell by this rating, I had a great time with Fourth Wing. It really brought me back to why I enjoy reading the genre, and even when things were cliched and predictable, I just simply had a great time with it. Then Iron Flame, I DNF'd. I absolutely couldn't get through it, and it felt like the quality really dropped. And then the third book brought it back up, sort of to a mid-tier. I mean, I liked Violet and Xaden's dynamic the most in Fourth Wing, but Onyx Storm was already an improvement, and Iron Flame, I read up a summary on it and I refused to pick it up ever again. Let's see how it goes with the fourth book. I don't have such high hopes, but I might continue reading the series. Talking about book series where the books get wildly different ratings from me, Captive Prince I would put in Is It Cursed or Am I Cursed? And Princess Gambit, I was so invested in it. Okay, I said this before, but I truly believe that the second book is the reward for making it through the first. Because the first has a lot of plot points or character decisions which you as a reader definitely wouldn't agree with. But it's also needed in terms of preparing for the breakthrough and the whole slow burn trust development that happens in the second book. You can tell by this tier list, but I greatly enjoy two capable people learning how to work together as a plot point, so that's why Princess Gambit is rated much higher than Captive Prince. Now I have insane expectations for the conclusion of the trilogy, which is titled King's Rising, so you will definitely hear about it if you follow my channel. Okay, we only have 10 left on the list, let's go. Let's go for an absolute hidden gem. I am still very surprised that not more people talk about Reign and Ruin. Here we have competent and powerful main characters with elemental powers who don't need each other. But that just makes it even more beautiful when they choose each other and learn from each other. This book is just the right balance of political intrigue with character development and a truly elite tier yearning romance plotline. If there's only one book from this entire list that you take my recommendation for, let it be Reign and Ruin, because it's truly underrated. Going back for series where I rate the books differently, Phantasma, I would say I was invested. Would I rate it as high, or would I say I felt something briefly? Ooh, that's hard. Actually, both would be true. I would say I was invested, because if Phantasma wasn't as strong as it was, I would have never read the sequel. And unfortunately, Enchanted only gets the is it cursed or am I cursed rating. I feel like Phantasma was so much stronger, both in terms of character depth and the trials that the main character had to face. And Enchanted was very much lukewarm, borderline. Why did I even finish this book? Why did I even read it? It didn't really add much to the first book. So honestly, that's the rating I have to give. Phantasma, I was invested. Enchanted, is it cursed or am I cursed? If this was the first book, if Enchanted was the first book, I probably wouldn't have continued the series. And at this point, I'm not sure I will. I'm not even sure if the series even continues, but I completely lost interest after Enchanted. Something else, a truly refreshing read, a strange and stubborn endurance. I was invested. It was a refreshing read, like I said. The central plot revolves around a political marriage where trust develops slowly and the endurance for duty becomes learning how to love. And I think that's just beautiful. Honestly, another strength of this story lies in the realistic characters and also the story pacing. So the characters have outbursts, but they're also very self-aware of how foolish they acted in certain situations, and the communication, thankfully, is very much on the healthy side in this story. It is also a slow burn, but every step forward feels earned. Overall, I had a great time with this. Again, a little bit underrated. I think more people should read it. We are down to the last few. Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. Is it cursed or am I cursed? Here I'm leaning to think it is cursed. Ellie Hazelwood, however, is very much a hit or miss author for me. I didn't like The Love Hypothesis, but I actually enjoyed Check and Mate. And Bride, again, was on the lower end of reading experiences. It didn't pull me in. The whole vampire and werewolf dynamic was not exciting enough for me, and I just felt like there was a lot of unnecessary drama. So, is it cursed or am I cursed? At this point, both can be true at the same time. Another book which I had high expectations for and it fell short is Where the Dark Stands Still, which I can only rate as high as I felt something briefly. Redeeming qualities, it had a Polish mythology-inspired backdrop, which was actually refreshing, and I really liked the central premise of a divine bargain with the guardian of the forest. But overall, the development of this plot stood on rather weak legs, and I feel like the author really tried to force found family vibes into the story. Yeah, I feel like this book had potential. I felt something briefly. Overall, it didn't manage to impress me all that much. Staying with the Polish vibes, Blood and Steel promised Witcher vibes, and it delivered. I feel like the training was done rather realistically, and also they had to go through trials, which was also done rather well. This was very action-packed and high stakes. Maybe the issue is that I read this book a couple of years ago, and the fact that I recall the training scenes and the trial scenes more than the actual romance kind of illustrates how important the romance was in this whole story. And I mean, overall it didn't make a lasting impression. I think it was fairly okay, but it was nothing memorable. So I can say I felt something briefly, but it didn't do much more than that. Another hidden gem discovery: if you enjoyed The Invisible Life of Adalyn and you like stories centered around the theme of immortality and loneliness, you would enjoy Peaches and Honey. I was so invested in this story. It's a real slow burn because the plot literally takes place across centuries, but it's definitely not your usual fantasy romance setting, and there are so many ups and downs that keeps you on your toes. Overall, I had a great time with this, and I feel like the setting and the way of storytelling was truly a standout among all the fantasy romances, romance fantasies. A truly diabolical pick, with it being reverse harem paranormal romance. Broken Bonds. I finished it within like 2 days or so. Is it cursed or am I cursed? And here, am I cursed is a little bit in the positive way, because I breezed through this book. Was it well done? No. Did I have a good time with it? Unfortunately, yes. I don't want to go into more details, but let's just say this book single-handedly pulled me out of a reading slump. And for that, it deserves the tier Am I Cursed? But more in the positive way than all of the others next to it. So out of the few remaining books, A River Enchanted and A Fire Endless, you could guess it, I would sell my soul for these, although a little bit differently. So I read them actually years apart within the duology, and that might have influenced my ratings on them. I rated A River Enchanted a little bit higher than A Fire Endless. I feel like the first book really drew me in with the element of magic, the whole Scottish island setting, and very emotional character struggles, not only in love relationships, but also a lot of family relationships were explored really well, and they were really landing emotionally. And that's why I was really anticipating the sequel, but also a little bit scared to get into it because I wanted to prolong this experience. And I finally picked up A Fire Endless, I believe beginning of this year or end of last year. I think it's beginning of this year. And I would say, while I still had a good time, it didn't land as strongly as the first one. It felt a little bit dragging when it came to the main plotline, and the final conclusion felt very rushed and underwhelming. However, as a duology as a whole, I would still sell my soul for these two books. A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping might be a bit of an outlier in terms of this being more cozy fantasy with a lot lower stakes conflict, although they are still significant, for example, for the main characters. I would rate this... I was invested, honestly. I was thinking, I felt something briefly, but what I felt was actually consistent throughout the story. It has impeccable found family vibes. It makes you just warm and fuzzy inside. Granted, I read this in one sitting on an airplane, so that might have contributed to my reading experience. But overall, I felt like the love story development felt organic, not rushed, not forced, not over-dramatized. And I was also invested in the side characters. So overall, it was a good experience, and I would recommend it to anybody who is looking for a bit lower stakes and more cozy fantasy with a great romance subplot. So let's end this video on a very high note. Absolute standout reads from last year, A Rivalry of Hearts, and My Feral Romance from Tassonia Odette. I would categorize them as silly little fae romances with absolute top tier banter. There is plenty of flirting, funny situations, very sweet romance with believable internal and sometimes external conflicts, all wrapped up in this fictional Victorian era setting where humans and fae coexist, basically. The series is criminally underrated, if you ask me. I'm usually not a big fan of friends to lovers development, but the second book, My Feral Romance, managed to convince me because the spark wasn't missing and the book as a whole delivered a masterful example of how it can work and have the tension ramp up step by step. Plus, I also love an oblivious woman with a completely smitten man kind of pairing, so especially when we also get his point of view. This was so much fun. I would sell my soul for these. The third book, I believe, in the series is coming out, where the main characters are the side characters from the second book, so I also have high expectations for that one. There you have it, 30 romantasy books tier ranked that I read in the last few years. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with some of my ratings, or for example if you had the best time of your life with the sort of lower tier books, or if you also have criticism for my top tier books. I always enjoy hearing about a challenging point of view. Don't forget to subscribe to catch my next video. Until then, take care, bye!